When we were in India with Maharaji, many times he would point to Ram Dass and he would say, he's like Christ for the Westerners. And really, so many of us really came to the Dharma, came to the spiritual path through him in some way or another. Very interesting. When Ram Dass was in India the first time, and he had to, on his way back to America, Maharaji said to him, "Don't talk about me." So what did he do? That's the only thing he talked about. All day, all night, any time. That's all he talked about was Maharaji. I had heard about him from some friends of mine who were whose farm I lived on in upstate New York. They were Jungian acid head mountain climbers. Yeah. So one day they told me they were going to meet this guy Ram Dass, who was Richard Alpert. And he had gone to India and got this name, and they asked me if I wanted to go. I said, nah, I'm not interested in any American yogis. So they went off, and they were supposed to come back that night or the next day. They didn't come back for 2 or 3 days. I had just come out of the goat shed. We had, it was the 60s, right? We had goats. We had 2 goats. The name were Alice Bailey and Madame Blavatsky were our goats. So I had this pail of goat milk, and I saw the car cut through the road, through the field, turned around in the driveway. And the guy, my friend, he gets out of the car, and he turns around and he looks at me. And there was a light shooting out of his head. I mean, I never saw anything like that in my life without certain chemical help. So I just said, "Write down the directions. I'm leaving right now." I went out to my cabin in the woods, and I got some stuff together, and I hit the road. It was the coldest night of the year, and my old car, the heater didn't even work anymore. It was too cold. I pulled up in the morning to this beautiful farmhouse, covered with snow everywhere, total silence. And as soon as I turned the car off, I felt this thing in the center of my chest kind of go like, blip. What's that, That's weird. Anyway, so then I thought, all right. So I went up to the house and knocked on the door. And this guy with a big, long beard opens up. And there he is right now. He doesn't have a beard anymore, Ramesh Das. You can blame this all on him. We'll drink to that. And he just looked at me with this crazed look in his eye, and he pointed up these stairs behind him like, and I thought, get me the fuck out of here. I don't know what's going on. This is crazy. I'm not going to. It was too late. So I walked up the stairs, up into this little room. Ram Dass was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. He had his eyes closed. The minute I walked into that room, without a word being spoken, without eye contact, the minute I walked into that room, something happened to me. And at that moment, I knew beyond any doubt, I knew that whatever it was I was looking for, whatever it was my heart was longing for, was real, it was in the world, and you could find it. That was really a big moment. Of course, it only got me more depressed, right? If it's in the world and you don't know where it is, what good is that? But, so a really funny thing happened. So we spent all afternoon together, and We look in each other's eyes. He had this thing he did at the time where he would ask you, okay, we're going to look in each other's eyes, and anything you don't want to say, say. So we sat there for like hours, and I didn't say a word. I didn't say one thing I wanted to say, you know. Then he said, well, it's getting close to dinner time, and you can stay for dinner, or if you're going to go, you should go now. So I had to drive a school bus. That was my job at the time. So I had to get back to New York by the next morning. So then he said, he had given me this mantra sometime during the afternoon. He said, whether you go or stay, your mantra will protect you. And I thought, there's something wrong with this guy, you know? What is this shit, you know? But anyway, okay, thanks. I got in my car and I hit the road. Now, I had driven all night before, the whole night, and I hadn't slept. So about half an hour into the drive, I pulled over. Remember those little baby Ben alarm clocks that you had to wind up? I wound it up, I set it for like an hour sleep. Put it on the ashtray on the dashboard. Pulled off the road and I went to sleep. The next thing I knew, I woke up driving. And I did not know where I was, what I was doing, where I was going, how I got there. I was like, and I was on the right side of the road. I wasn't speeding. I was like, I turned it off in my sleep and got on the road. And the first thought I had was, your mantra will protect you. I screamed that mantra all the way to New York. Oh, man. Yeah. Lama Tsultrim met Ram Dass before he met Maharaji up in Nepal, right? You want to tell him that story?
Hello, everybody. Nice to be with you. So I was in Nepal in 1967, and I was living in a little house below the monkey temple in Kathmandu, which is called Swambhunath. It's a big stupa up on the mountain, and I lived in a little house down below. And I was living with Bhagavan Das and a Japanese traveler named Sawamura. And we heard that Richard was in town and he had acid. So at that time in Kathmandu, every full moon there would be a party. And so that time they said the party's going to be at the Sulti Hotel, which is the one fancy hotel in Kathmandu at the time. And we were all like, we were not living in the way that people in those hotels were living. We were living without electricity, with just cooking on a little kerosene stove and so on. But we decided to go to this party at the Sulti Hotel. Bhagavan Das and I and Sawamura all went. And that night, it was like, Bhagavan Das is a seducer, I would say. Right?
A what?
Seducer.
Yeah.
A magnetizer, maybe you could say. And he was very interested in Richard and in getting to know him and somehow being with him. We all knew about Richard Alpert and LSD and Harvard and all that. So Bhagavan Das really wanted to get to know him.
And get the acid.
Get the acid, yeah. And so this party ensued that got pretty wild. And people were being thrown into the swimming pool with their clothes on. And Bhagavan Das was gradually getting closer and closer to Ram Das, who was then Richard. And at a certain point, we decided, Salmore and I decided to leave and go back to Swayambhu, and Bhagavan Das stayed with Richard. And he didn't come back for 3 days. He stayed there in the hotel with him. And then when he came back, he had this kind of tika, you know, the thing that Indian women wear on their foreheads, but it was like a mirror and a spiral, like a rainbow spiral it created. And so he had these things that he'd gotten from Richard. And so I had met Richard that night at the party, but I didn't really get to know him. And then Bhagavan Das said that we're leaving. I'm leaving with Richard, and I'm going to take him to my guru. At that time, Bhagavan Das had also studied with Tibetan lamas, with Kala Rinpoche, and he was sort of wearing half Tibetan robes and half Indian style. So he was kind of a crossover, I guess, cross-dresser, you could say, maybe? Cross-dresser between Hindu and Buddhist. And so they left, and that was the last I heard of Bhagavan Das or Ram Das until I got back to the United States. When was it? Well, I came back, and then I went back again, and then I was ordained 1970. And so I wasn't really aware until Bodh Gaya, which is when I met you. Bodh Gaya in the Goenka courses.
Yeah.
Was that 71?
I think it was December 70.
So, oh yeah, end of 70. Yeah, so then I met Ram Das again, and he had become Ram Das, and it was Krishna Das and Danny Goleman and Parvati and Mirabai, and they were all there together, but I wasn't living there. I was living in the Gandhi ashram.
Yeah, I had heard we were doing these meditation courses, and one day the teacher called me in for my interview, and he was sitting on the bed, and there was a window behind him, and I looked up at him, and I could see right through him out the window. And I went, whoa. So then I had heard about Tsultrim, who was known as Anila, which means monk. She was a nun at the time, that somebody living on the Gandhi ashram roof in a little hut. So I went to visit you. That's when we said hello and everything, and I said, I had this experience with the teacher, and she just looked at me and she said, he has a lot of space between his molecules. And I thought, okay. But we've been friends since then, you know. We hang out in the space between the molecules.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, I don't know. Most of us who are in this room are here because of this next moment I'm going to tell you about, which you probably read about 1,000,000 times. So Bhagavan Das and Ram Das were in this Land Rover that they appropriated from David Padwa, who left it in their care, Ram Das's care. And they were driving. Bhagavan Das needed to get his visa extended, so he wanted to go see Maharaji, because Maharaji could do that for him. So they drove from Nepal down, and they spent one night in Bareilly at this man's house. And in the middle of the night, Ram Das got up, and he had to go to the bathroom. So he walked out of the house towards the outhouse, the latrine outside in the back. And as he was walking there, he looked up at the stars, and it was just stunningly beautiful. And he felt at that moment very close to his mother, who had died some months before. He really felt her presence in that moment. And then he went to the bathroom and then went to sleep. Nobody saw him, and he didn't tell anybody about that. So the next day, they got into the car and drove another 6 or 8 hours up into the mountains and to where Maharaji was. And after much hesitation, Ram Dass went over to sit with Maharaji. And Maharaji looks at him and he said, he teased him a little bit about how much money he made. And then he asked him if he would give him the car that he had, you know. And Ram Dass just got really uptight. And then Maharaji just started laughing. Then he says to Ram Dass, "You were out under the stars last night?" "Yes." "You were thinking about your mother?" "Yes." "She died?" "Yes." "She got very big here before she died?" Ram Dass said, "Yes." Then Maharaji said in English, which is a language he supposedly didn't speak, he said, "Spleen." Now, she had died from cancer of the spleen. And when he said spleen, Ram Dass crumbled. He completely fell apart. His heart exploded, and he was on the ground crying uncontrollably. That was the moment. From that moment, this is here, right now. Because that's the moment that Ram Dass connected to something that was deeper than anything he had ever imagined before, ever could imagine before. He connected to real love and real being and timeless awareness, all in the blink of an eye with the word spleen. And we're all here because of that moment. A lot of people have been asking me lately about, they heard about the story of Ram Dass giving Maharaji acid. So the first time that happened was the day after the spleen incident. Maharaji looked at Ram Dass and said, "You have some medicine?" So Ram Dass thought, well, maybe he has a headache, so he took out some aspirin. Maharaji said, "Nay, the yogi medicine." "Yogi medicine?" He must mean acid. So he had 3 or 4 hits of very good pure acid. He puts it on the palm of his hand, holds it out. Maharaji takes it, throws it in his mouth. 4 hits. Enough acid to put a horse on the moon. And they just sat around all day and nothing happened. He twinkled all day long, no difference. And this was really big for Ram Dass because one of the reasons he went to India was to find someone who knew what this really was. And he knew it had changed his life, but he did not know what is it. And then when that happened with Maharaji, he recognized that Maharaji was beyond acid. So when he got back to America, he would tell people this story, and some people would go up to him and say, "Come on, he scammed you. He probably threw it over his shoulder. You know, you're a fool." So Ram Dass didn't think so, but you know, he had a little bit of doubt. So about a year after Ram Dass came back to India, I had already gone there. We were traveling around, and we met Maharaji in Vrindavan at one of his temples. And we were sitting with Maharaji one day, and he looked at Ram Dass and he says, "When you were here last time, did you give me medicine?" "Yes." "Did I take it?" "I think so." "Oh, got any more?" "Yes." "Give it to me." So again, Ram Dass put the acid out on his hand, he held it out to Maharaji, and Maharaji went like this. He took one pill and he goes, four or 5 times, right? And then, after a couple of minutes, he takes his blanket and he pulls it up over his head, right? And then he opens it up and he goes, "Ah!" And then down again like this, and then, "Ah!" Like this. I was sitting right next to Ram Dass. I had never seen a human being turn purple before. And Ram Dass thought, shit, he didn't take it last time, and now he was trying to prove to me that he could do it. I've killed my guru, you know. He thought And as soon as Ram Dass had that thought, Maharaji dropped the whole show, and he just laughed, and he said, when a yogi, no poison can affect a yogi. And yogis have known about this for thousands of years. He said he used to grow up in the Kulu Valley. A yogi would go, and he would quiet his body, he would quiet his mind, he would bring his mind to one point, and then he would take the soma and go through the door. Maharaj used to say, LSD can bring you into the room with Christ, but you can't stay. And the only way to stay is love. So, he seemed to know everything about everything, or anything you needed to know, or anything you needed to feel, it happened around him. And Ram Dass said to me many times, you know, really all we do is share our faith, our understanding of Maharaji with people. That's all we do. We don't have anything else, really. It's our connection with him, which is the only thing we have we can share. You know, he had that stroke. For 22 years he's in a wheelchair. Couldn't do anything for himself. Couldn't turn himself in bed. Couldn't transfer himself from chair to bed to wheelchair. Basically couldn't feed himself. He overcame pride and anger and fear and shame. He overcame all these things. He used to say to me, the stroke saved my life. And he really meant it. Every day, there was no escape for him. There was no, okay, I'll go watch TV for a while and forget everything. He was there in that chair. He wasn't going anywhere. And he recognized that. He surrendered to that. And he conquered all the obstacles in the way of being present in the moment, fully here. It was incredible. I used to tease him. I used to say, you finally become who we thought you were 40 years ago. He would laugh, you know. So, really, we had a lot of stuff between us over the years, but the last 20 years were fantastic. We really allowed each other to be who we were and to love each other as we are. It was really something. So, how much time do we have? You don't work? There you are, okay. So tonight we're going to sing. Later on we're going to do some chanting later on tonight. But I thought Lama Tsultrim is so extraordinary. I mean, she's been fully immersed in Dharma and spiritual practice for so many years. All those years that I've been watching television, she's been fucking meditating. Pisses me off. So, I thought the best thing, a really nice thing to do would, I've asked her to come and join us and talk a little bit about meditation and on Tara, the goddess Tara. And after that, we'll sing a short mantra together for Tara. And then we'll see where we're at, okay? That was a rhetorical question.
Tara, at one point in history, was a human being. She was a princess, and her name was, can you hear me okay?
They're
Yeah.
going to turn you up a little bit.
Her name was Wisdome Moon, Yeshe Dawa in Tibetan. And she was a very strong practitioner. Even though she was a princess, her whole focus was on the Dharma and on meditation. And so she was progressing rapidly. And then this monk who was teaching her said to her, "It's really too bad that you're a woman because you can't get enlightened in a female body. You'll have to come back and be reincarnated as a man, and then you can reach full and unsurpassed enlightenment." And Tara sat for a moment, and she was also very learned. Something landing here? She said then she understood emptiness. And she said, notions of gender are just for fools. There is no man and there is no woman. However, since so many have chosen to take the male body and become enlightened, I will become enlightened in the female body. And I will always return in the female body. And so she did. And she became enlightened in the female body. And so there are 21 aspects of Tara. And actually, if anybody's interested in learning about those, there is a course going on now through Tara Mandala on the 21 Taras, each of their mantras and their story. In any case, there's two most well-known aspects or emanations of Tara. There's green Tara and white Tara. And so, where is Tara now? Where is Tara now? She is in the Sambhogakaya, which is the dimension of luminosity. It is a dimension of form, like some might say it's something like the angelic dimension, but it's a pure dimension. And for us in this kind of human body that we have now, most people can't see that dimension. It's too refined, it's too pure, because we have veils over our eyes and our minds. But Tara is in that dimension of Sambhogakaya. And Tara is considered to be the most accessible of all the meditational deities like Avalokiteshvara, Vajrapani, or all the various deities of the Tibetan pantheon. Tara is the one that you can practice without having the formal initiation of Tara. And she comes. She's known as the swift coming one. She's a rapid responder. I like to say Green Tara is the head of the Green Party, and she's a first responder. So you can always call her. There's so many Tara stories where she has come to people. There's one story from Kala Rinpoche, who you met also, didn't you meet him? Kala Rinpoche? Yeah. It's a wonderful Tibetan Lama who'd spent 12 years in retreat. So in Tibet, when you go into retreat, you're not supposed to leave. Like, you make a commitment, and then you stay. And even if you die, you stay. Or even if your mother dies, you stay. Or your father dies, you stay. So he had just started a 12-year retreat, and he got an abscessed tooth, which you can die from. And so, but he couldn't leave. And so he was lying down in his meditation cave and in incredible pain, and it was gradually going into his brain. And he had a dream of Tara. And she said to him, "You've never done my mantra, you've never done my practice, and you've never shown any faith in me, but if you do 10,000 of my mantra, I will heal you. And this is the visualization," and so on. And so he did it, and he was healed and was able to complete his retreat. And so after that, any retreat center or any monastery connected to Kala Rinpoche always practiced Tara. He never left her out. And so I want to encourage all of you today to learn this mantra and to know that you can use it. You can call on Tara if you need to. I have a very personal experience with this, with my grandson. His name is Otto. He was about 3 at the time. And his parents live in Telluride, which is about 3 hours from Taramandala, my center in Colorado. And so I planned to go to see them at the end of a retreat I was teaching. But I was really tired at the end of the retreat, and I thought, I'll just sleep here tonight, and then I'll go in the morning. And then I thought, I really want to see Otto. I'll just go. And just to even see him for a moment is worth it. And so I got in my car and I went, did this 3-hour drive, and then as I was coming over the mountain down into Telluride, I called my daughter like I always would. And she said, "Mom, I'm at the hospital. Otto drank gun-bluing acid, and they're debating whether to take him to Grand Junction or flight for life to Denver." And so she said, "Come to the hospital." And so I went to the hospital, and Otto was throwing up black, chemical-smelling thing. He was crying, and there was just all this black coming out of him. And the people at the hospital, his father manages that hospital, the med center in Telluride. They all knew this baby. It wasn't like a child they didn't know. And so they were all like white. And then they came to us and said, "It's flight for life." And so we went to the airport. That plane was in Durango, and it took 18 minutes to get there. And on the way to the airport, I started to do Tara. And I also called every Lama that I know. And I called Tara Mandala, and I said, "Just do Tara." And all the Lamas I called said yes. And I said, "It's literally life and death." And so he took off with his father. My daughter had a broken ankle at the time, couldn't go, and only one parent could go. So they had to decide who would go. And so I'm looking at my daughter waving to maybe never see her child again. And as they took off, I saw a green cloud around the plane. And as they landed in Denver, a short time later, Eric the fathers called us and said, the doctor just met me and he said, this has always been fatal. Just get ready. And so I just kept doing Tara all night. I stayed up all night. The next morning they said they were going to go down and look inside and see what had happened. There was no antidote. He's still alive in the morning. And about 2 hours later they called and Eric sent photographs. And there wasn't even a mark in his system. It was just pink and perfect. And they said, they can't explain this. This is impossible, that there would be no burns or anything. And that's my experience with Tara, one of them. I've had a lot of them, but that one's really like, Otto went to Bhutan with me in 2016, and he's 10 now. His little brother. So that's Tara. So I want you all, as you do this, to realize that you're going to learn something that you can use. And so I'll explain how Tara looks. She has one foot coming down. That's her foot that's stepping into the world. And then one foot that's tucked in the meditation posture. So she's half in the world and half in meditation, which is a place many of us find ourselves. And she's green. And she's holding one hand out, like this, like that, touching. This is where the healing comes from. And then her left hand is up, and she's holding an Utpala flower, which is a blue lotus. And it's a symbol of green Tara. So, as we do it, you can also take this posture, if you feel like it, try it, and feel yourself as Tara, as green and luminous, and sending healing out to the world. And if you know anyone who's ill, or you want to think about the people with COVID who are on those machines, all alone in hospitals, or any kind of situation that you want to send healing energy to, that would be wonderful. And I think there's a lot of us here, and we could do a lot if we really focus. So Krishna Das will lead us in the Green Tara chant.
You want to tell them the mantra first? You tell them the mantra.
Yeah. So the mantra is Om Tare. Maybe you say it. Om Tare.
Om Tare.
Tu Tare.
Tu Tare.
Ture.
Ture.
Swaha.
Swaha.
Om Tare.
Om Tare.
Tu Tare.
Tu Tare.
Ture.
Ture.
Swaha.
So we sing this all together. Om Tare, Tu Tare, Tere Swaha. Om Tare, Tu Tare, Tere Swaha. Om Tare, Tu Tare, Tere Swaha. Om Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. 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 Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Swaha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tare Om Tare Tu Tare When we got to India, I wanted to be Indian. I was never going to go back to America. That was my plan. But Maharaji had different ideas. We would ask him, Baba, how do we find God? He said, serve people. What? Serve people? And we think, he doesn't know what we're asking really, So he said, how do we raise Kundalini? He said, feed people. Feed people? And basically he said to us, love everyone, serve everyone, remember God. We thought, well, okay, we're not qualified for the real teaching. But you know what it turns out? He was telling us the truth. He never gave us practices that we could supposed to do for the sake of our own enlightenment. He didn't encourage us to think about ourselves. And in fact, at one point, after I'd been there a couple of years, I was having a full-on hallucinatory nervous breakdown right in the temple. And I went running to him. I put my head in his lap and I was crying. And I had been thinking about killing myself. There was a river behind the temple. And I thought, maybe I could drown myself. The problem was the river was only 6 inches deep. But I thought if I got my head under a rock, I could probably get it done, He looks at me and he said, what are you going to do, jump in the river? Ha! He laughed. He said, you can't die. Worldly people don't die. Only Jesus died the real death. What is he talking about? And then he said, he died the real death because he never thought of himself. Now, let me ask you a question. You answer it for yourself in your own mind. What do we do all day, every day, 24 hours a day, except when we're sleeping? Then we dream about ourselves. We think about ourselves all day long, all life long. We wake up in the morning. We start writing, producing, directing, and acting in the movie of me. What am I going? Where am I going? Will they like me? Should I wear this? Should I wear that? What should I do? Should I go there? Should I go there? And then we write reviews that we read and get more depressed. And it never ends. How does it end? Where is the thought? Can you shoot it as it goes by? No. But that's what he said. The real death, of course, is the death of the supposed ego. The belief that we are separate from other people and other beings. And so we suffer. So he encouraged us to think about others and not to think about ourselves. And to do some practice. That's the remember God part. Some practice. And from what he used to say to us all the time was that the repetition of these names of God that we, Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Hare Krishna, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Shri Durga, all these names, the repetition of these names, through the repetition of names, everything is accomplished. He said that over and over to us. Everything is made full and complete. Everything is accomplished through the repetition of the name. Do I believe him? Well, maybe with 3% of my 1% I might believe him. Because if I really believed him, that's what I'd be doing 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So to the extent that I have belief and faith and understanding, that's how much practice I can do. But we have to plant the seeds. We have to plant the karmic seeds for the things that we need. And what we really need, more than anything, is connection to the deepest reality, to the real love that lives within us. And these names that we chant are the names of that place inside of us. And through the repetition of these names, these mantras, we move more deeply into our true self, our true being. But it's like a catch-22. If you don't have enough, let's say, confidence in the teaching, then you're not going to do the practice. And if you don't do the practice, you don't create more openness to the teachings in yourself. It's very interesting. So even right in the middle of the crap of our daily lives, we really have to kind of find a moment to chill, to just let it all drop for a minute. Even if you don't do some mantra and some concentration practice and sit there for an hour pretending you're meditating, like I do, you can at least allow things to calm down a little bit. Every day for a few minutes, let it go. Even if it's 5 minutes, just to get used to what it's like when you're not crazy all the time. It takes a little practice, a little time to ripen. I really see the path as a ripening situation. I never learned anything. I'm just too cranky and stupid to learn, but I remember where the sun is. So when I remember, I drag my miserable ass out into the sun to be ripened. And the sun for me is that presence, that love that Maharaji embodies for me. And so remember, do something, you know? If you don't, then what? Nothing. But not the real nothing, just the nothing. The real nothing's not nothing. So, I think it's 5 o'clock. It is. You want to say anything?
It's been wonderful to be with you all. I can't see you all, but I can feel you all. And I think there's people out there on the internet too, right? Are there people out there on the internet? Yeah. So,
there are, yeah. In here on the internet.
I love that etheric connection on the internet, and sending you all love and blessings. And I want to say thank you to Raghu, who put a tremendous amount of work into this event. Yeah, and it's so important that we do practice. It really does do something. I have a saying that I like, which is, meditation is activism. Meditation is activism. And I believe it is. I believe it has impact, like activism does. And so I wish you all a beautiful journey of activism. Thank you.
So, Maharaji, I'm going to tell you Maharaji's favorite mantra besides Ram Ram. Jao. It means go away. Go away and eat something and then come back, and we're going to be doing music all night, okay? Namaste.